Hello and welcome back to my channel. I have been preparing for this video for a while now. I have been reading every book on the International Booker long list this year. This is the first time I've ever done this. I have sort of followed the long list in the past, but this year I just locked in and I was like determined to read every book, and also I wanted to try and read them before the winner was announced. So I could see if I agree with the winner. So that is what I've done. I have my winner. So I thought I would rank them today, tell you a little bit about what my thoughts were. And then when the winner is announced in, I think, a few days' time, I think it's next week, I will film a little reaction to the winner, pop it on the end, and then I'll post this. I don't know why I'm telling you all this because it doesn't really matter. You're just watching the video, but that is my plan. It's been a very fun couple of months to read these books. A lot of them have been very much out of my comfort zone. There was definitely some on the list that I was like, I don't know if that's going to be for me. Without further ado, shall we start through my ranking of the books? So I should say to start with, there was one book that I did DNF. This was The Director by Daniel Kalman, which is interesting because I know a lot of people loved this book. A lot of people predicted it to be on the long list and the short list. When it did get shortlisted, I was a bit like, maybe I should try again. But honestly, I didn't think it was going to rank very highly for me personally. I just did not enjoy it at all, which is a real shame. It's the only one I didn't finish. This is a story that is focused on or inspired by the life of a film director who fled to Hollywood to avoid the Nazis, but then he is eventually forced to go back to Germany to make propaganda films. I think it just started very slow to me and I just wasn't enjoying it at all. And I got to the point where I was like, I'm forcing myself to read this to finish it, which I did with a couple of the other books, but I just really wasn't enjoying it. I wasn't particularly invested in what was going on. I just didn't feel particularly connected with the characters. Yeah, basically just found it quite confusing, a little bit boring, and I just wasn't interested. I felt like I was forcing myself to pick it up and forcing myself to finish it just because I was doing this challenge. And I got to the point where I didn't want to do that. So I put it down. And so it is, I guess, at the bottom of my list. I can't really rank it because I didn't finish it, but that was kind of a ranking in itself, I guess. But it is definitely an unpopular opinion. Loads of people love this. It's got a lot of 5 stars. And obviously it's made the shortlist. So clearly the judges loved it too. So then we come to the books I did finish. So in 12th place, I have put The Deserters by Matthias Arnaud, which is translated by Charlotte Mandel. I, again, didn't love this one. We're following 2 novellas that are kind of interwoven throughout the book, but they never actually connect to each other. They just sort of constantly interrupt each other, which I found quite frustrating, I can't lie. So the first one is about a man who has deserted the army, and the second is about a famous mathematician at a conference. And I can't lie, neither of those things are particularly interesting to me. I found both of them quite a struggle to get through. I found the writing style really strange and detached, especially in the math story. And then I found it very poetic and a bit confusing and disjointed in the deserter story. I just kind of didn't care. I was pretty happy when I got to the end of this one. Next up, in 11th place, we have We Are Green and Trembling by Gabriela Menzon Camara, which is translated by Robin Myers. This is sort of the reimagining of a life of a nun who fled the convent and lived as a man and became a soldier during the Spanish conquest of South America. I really liked the concept, and there were parts of this I did enjoy. Overall, I found it very, very difficult to read. I found it, again, this is maybe a me problem, I just found it very confusing. I didn't really understand what was going on. I found the writing quite dense and hard to sort of get through. I enjoyed the descriptions of the jungle, and I enjoyed the conversations that our main character was having with the young girls, but there was a lot I didn't enjoy. There was a lot of religion that just didn't really resonate with me, and I didn't really love the ending. So overall, it wasn't a winner for me. It does have an absolutely beautiful cover though in both editions, so it's winning there. We then in 10th place have The Duke by Matteo Melchior, which is translated by Antonella Lettieri. I didn't hate this. I found it very long and very long-winded. I feel like it could have been a lot shorter. And I did find quite like big chunks of it a little boring, but it wasn't a boring that I hated. It was just like quite a melancholy, like sort of gentle story, I guess. Boring doesn't always mean bad. Like a lot of the books I love are books where nothing really happens. So I'm not against that. I just felt like it was way too long. So this follows a duke who has moved back to his like ancestral home, which is sort of a house in the mountains overlooking this town. And it's a very isolated town. It's also very small, and there's a lot of town drama, and this duke just keeps getting sucked into this drama. It's mostly revolving around land management and woodland management, which again is a bit of a dry topic, and it's mostly looking at the egos of a bunch of men who just keep arguing with each other over basically nothing. So again, not my favorite topics, but I didn't hate it. I just kind of felt okay about it. Like it was just quite an all right read. But yeah, I kind of just wanted a bit more from it. I wanted the Duke to be more eccentric. I wanted like other characters to just maybe have a bit more about them. But overall, yeah, it was fine. We then have in 9th place The Wax Child by Olga Raven, which is translated by Martin Eichen. I'm quite sad this is so low because I loved Olga Raven's other book, The Employees. I actually read this book first, and I read it just before the long list was announced. So I feel like I read it a very long time ago now. And again, I didn't dislike it. I just didn't feel like I got enough out of it, or as much out of it as I wanted to. It's following a group of witches, all women, I guess, in the 17th century who have been accused of witchcraft. And I think it's based mostly on a true story, or at least from some true historical accounts, which is really interesting. I thought it was very deeply researched. It was clearly a work of a lot of sort of time and effort. Oh, I should say it's also narrated by a wax child, so a sort of doll that they've made out of wax and breathed life into, which is a very interesting premise. But I just felt, I think because it's narrated by sort of this like omnipresent sort of being, I didn't feel very connected to any of the characters, and I wanted to be inside their heads rather than in this sort of just observing character. I wanted to know why they were doing what they were doing. I wanted to know how they were feeling as they were going through all these things. And I felt like just very disconnected from the characters. And I think that's what made it a bit of a lower read for me. In 8th place, we have Small Comfort by Aya Gemberg, which is translated by Kira Josephin. This I read last, so I read this most recently. And this is a book of short stories following sort of themes of capitalism and money and class. I quite liked it. So I always find with short stories, I find them a bit difficult because I always like some stories more than others. So then it's hard to rate the book as a whole. But I thought it was a very, like, each story had a very unique conceptual way of being written. So there was like an interview, there was one that was like a PhD's researching diary, there was one that was a wedding speech. Like, I thought that was really cool. I think what brought it a little bit lower for me was that it felt really like a bit preachy. Like, I agreed with a lot of the topics in this book about class and about what money does to people and how it changes people and all those sort of topics. But I did feel like it was a little bit in your face at times. But overall, I liked it, and I would read. I know this author has been longlisted, maybe even shortlisted before, and I would like to read her other book. Then we come to the books I actually own. So we have in 7th place Women Without Men by Sharnush Paspa, which is translated by Faridin Farrokh. This is a really odd little book. It's very short, and it's following a bunch of women who, for various reasons, leave their life behind and travel away from the men in their life and end up living together in this like house. So it's how all their stories connect, and then how they live in a world without men, basically. I enjoyed it. I think I read it all in a day. Things I liked. I liked the magical realism. I loved that element of like weird and magic stuff happening without really an explanation. I liked that one woman turns into a tree, and I thought that was so interesting and also relatable. And I liked the whole story of them sort of coming together and all their different sort of stories connecting. But then I felt like the ending kind of fizzled out for me, and I didn't love really where any of their stories ended up. Obviously, I won't spoil anything, but it felt like all the stuff we'd been building up to and all the commentary was kind of, it, like I said, just kind of fizzled out, and I felt like the ending was really lackluster. So overall, it was like, I enjoyed it. I thought it was really interesting, but it definitely wasn't like my favourite read of the list. In 6th place, we have On Earth as It Is Beneath by Anna Paula Meyer, which is translated by Padma Viswanathan. I'm surprised this is so high up because I thought this wouldn't work for me. It's definitely not the sort of thing I would normally gravitate towards. It is set in a remote area of Brazil where there is a sort of slightly forgotten penal colony of prisoners who are sent there to live out the rest of their days. But the warden has gone a bit mad and he is hunting down the remaining prisoners. He releases a couple of them each night and hunts them down. It's also a very short book. That a lot happens in a very short period of time. It's very fast paced. It's very gripping. It's very action packed. It felt very traditionally masculine in that there's a lot of guns and men and fighting and tension and action, which, as I said earlier, is not normally what I gravitate towards because I like a book about women doing nothing normally. But I did really enjoy it. I read it again in one sitting. I found it really gripping. I was turning the pages almost faster than I could read them because I really wanted to know what happened. So overall, I did really like it. Like I say, it pushed me out of my comfort zone, which is a good thing. So that is in 6th place. So now we're in the top 5, which is exciting. In 5th place, I've put The Remembered Soldier by Anya Darnyi, which is translated by David McKay. This was a real journey for me. I think it's ended up so high because it felt like I was so invested and immersed in this character's journey. So it's following a soldier. The war has come to the end and he has memory loss or amnesia of some kind and is living in an asylum until one day a woman claiming to be his wife appears and says, "I can take you home." How did you open that door? What was I saying? And then a woman turns up and claims to be his wife and says, "You can come home with me and I can help you get your memories back." I think it's the longest book on the long list and it felt like it. It did feel very long. It's very repetitive, which makes sense because it's about a man who doesn't remember anything. But I think maybe it was a little bit too repetitive. But I did find it really immersive. Like I said, I really wanted, there's sort of an underlying creepy suspicious element where something seems slightly off and something seems quietly unsettling, but you can't really work out what, and that really kept me reading. I think without that I would have struggled, but because I had that I really wanted to keep reading and see what happened, and I don't think the ending disappointed at all. I found the ending really thought-provoking. I found it crazy, and I really enjoyed the ending, which I think meant that the whole book felt worth it to me. I think I would have struggled if the ending had fell flat and I'd spent all that time reading something that didn't end well. So that was really good. Again, I don't normally gravitate to books about war at all. And yeah, I really enjoyed this. I guess it's not super set in the war, but it's sort of talking about the aftermath of war and what effects it can have on people. And being inside such a unreliable narrator's head was really interesting. I really liked that aspect. I love a book about an unreliable narrator. So it made its way to 5th place against what I thought would be my top 5. In 4th place, we have The Nights Are Quiet in Tehran, which is written by Shida Baziar and translated by Ruth Martin. This is following a family over 4 decades as we go through Iranian history. Obviously very topical read with the current climate, and it ended up being a very surprisingly gentle and quiet story. There was a lot of stuff going on, but it didn't feel like action-packed. It felt very character-focused. It wasn't the easiest to get into for sure. I wasn't sure I was going to love it at the beginning, but once I was into it and once I'd sort of got into the flow, it was very heartfelt, it was very interesting, quite captivating, and again, a really immersive story. Overall, I thought it was good. I didn't think it was super spectacular, but with the topics being really powerful, it just was quite a powerful read for me. So in third place, we have Taiwan Travelogue by Yang Shuangzi, which is translated by Lin King. This book felt like a real journey. I think it would be an incredible book to read if you were traveling to Taiwan, because you are experiencing a journalist who is a travel writer or an author, and she is visiting Taiwan from Japan during the time of Japanese colonial rule. And she is obsessed with food in a very intense way. So you're going through as she tries all this food and visits all these tourist and also off the beaten track locations. I think it would be such an amazing experience to read if you were traveling around Taiwan. And so this is more or less a book about food, that is food and travel, but that is sprinkled with other commentary on colonialism and power dynamics. And there's also a very subtle and intimate queer love story within this, and it just really felt like a journey. I loved the way it's presented as a translation of another book that gave me such a deeper context of the book. It made it feel very real, and there's like footnotes sprinkled throughout, both from the translator of the original book, so the author, and from Lin King, which I thought was really unique and really cool to have that insight into the actual translation, especially for an award such as this. I think the translation and that part of the book is a real feat and such a unique and interesting sort of endeavour that I really found that worked. I loved all the nuance about the translation, so it really hit a top spot for me. And then my top two books are really kind of interchangeable, so I'm gonna do it in the order that I think. So I'll give you number one of who I think should win the Booker Award. But the book I personally liked the most and was most up my street. I loved both of these, by the way. I'm not saying I didn't love what I put in number one. But the book that was my personal favourite was The Witch by Marina Dye, which is translated by Jordan Stump. This was my perfect amount of weird and surreal and dreamy and atmospheric that I love in a book. It is following a woman called Lucy who is a witch, although she has quite subpar witchy powers. And she has twin girls that she thinks are old enough for her to pass on these witchy powers, and they very quickly surpass her in their abilities and quite literally fly the nest. So we're following Lucy as she sort of goes through this sense of abandonment. It's very much about motherhood as well as womanhood. It was very weird, and I loved that. It had a very, like I said, a very dreamlike quality. You're not really sure what's going on, but there's an unsettling vibe, which I love. It really reminded me of Hiroko Oyamada's books, and I really enjoyed reading those earlier this year because they had the same vibes. There's a lot of odd and, like I say, slightly unnerving characters. Honestly, my only complaint is that I was hoping it would be a bit longer. I felt like we didn't dive as deeply into the character as we could have. I felt like I could have got lost in that like dreamlike writing for a lot longer. I really loved it. And I really want to try out some of the author's other translated works. But in first place, the book I think that should win the award for me personally is She Who Remains by Rennie Carabash, which is translated by Isadora Angel. I think this is one of the most impactful books I've read this year. I thought it was incredible and very haunting. It's a very fascinating insight into a remote Albanian village, and this village is still bound to very archaic customs and archaic laws. There's sacrifices, there's blood feuds, and in the case of the book, we are following our main character who has taken an oath to be a sworn virgin, which means she will remain a virgin, and because of that she can live as a man with the rights of a man. She has to renounce her womanhood and her sexuality. I don't want to say much more than that because I think it's quite short and I don't want to give spoilers. Although it's a very short book, it's full of a lot of exploration of identity and trauma and patriarchy and family and gender roles and violence. And although it's a very dark and violent book and a lot of those themes are quite heavy and, like I say, dark, it's ultimately a love story, and I loved it because of that. The writing style is very poetic, it's very fragmented, and it just really clicked for me very quickly, such that I followed it very easily, and I felt that it felt like the narrator was telling me the story, which was, I think, evidence that the translation is also a really good translation. So overall, it was just very beautiful, very powerful, and honestly unlike anything I've ever read, which is why I think it should be the winner. So that is my ranking. Obviously, I will come back at a later date next week to see what actually wins. I'm hoping it'll be one of my top 5. I do really like every book on the shortlist apart from the director. So hopefully it will be something I like, which is good. But yeah, it's been a really fun challenge and I'm excited to see who wins. Okay, I am back. It is Tuesday. It is 10 to 10, so they will be announcing the winner hopefully in about 10 minutes, which is exciting. We don't have anything yet. I'm pretty sure it said from 10:05. That'll be live streaming. Okay, so we have a little bit of time. I'll be back in a minute.
Shall not touch a man, and I shall preserve my virgin of innocence, renouncing for all mistaking than hunting wild animals, because he's colourblind.
This is really cool. They're doing like a little reading of each book, like a little film.
Perhaps not with Aoyama sensei, the mainlander writer.
Relaxed, grasping, asking a great deal of life with the most perfect innocence. They have next to no model.
Okay, that was all 6. Oh, there's loads of people there. Okay, this is it. The chair of judges.
And first off, I'd like to say
Why do I feel nervous? It doesn't affect me at all. The chat seems to be very split over... Well, no, there's a lot of Bulgaria going on. It'd be kind of cool if Bulgaria won the Booker Prize and Eurovision.
Admiration, one of the most exciting, unpredictable, and our winning book is a shining example of nuanced, layered, sumptuous storytelling. The winner of the International Booker Prize 2026 is Taiwan Travelogue by Yang Xuanzi, translated from the Mandarin Chinese by Lin King.
I actually wasn't expecting that. That was 3rd on my list though, so I feel like I still really liked that book. It highlighted all the nuance and interestingness of translation, so it just kind of makes sense, I guess. But the publisher won it last year too. So they've won it twice in a row, which is quite impressive. This music. There you have it. Let me know if you agree with the judges. I don't disagree. I just would have loved to see She Who Remains win. But I am very happy with that as a winner. Yeah, let me know what you think, and thank you for watching this video. And I'll see you next year for the International Booker Prize 2027.